Doing good today.
Introduce yourself first, please.
My name is Herbert Walker. I'm an attorney here in Miami, Florida. I handle litigation, specialties, travel, sometimes criminal, state, federal cases, a broad, diverse section of litigation interests.
I'd like to focus today on the U.S. travel industry and start by asking what the refund or return policy for tickets purchased in the United States is.
All right, now it's going to vary depending on whether your travel is airfare, airline travel, rail travel, or whether it's booking a hotel or a resort. Each company or genre of the travel industry has a slightly different return policy. The most liberal is going to be airline because most people travel by way of air more so than buses and trains. And generally, you're going to find that there's a larger penalty for cancellation based upon the time in advance of travel that you cancel. If you cancel the day before travel, obviously you're going to pay a larger penalty than if you booked a flight a year in advance and you canceled 6 months prior to the flight, because the airline can obviously sell off those tickets more easily. Additionally, the larger air carriers probably are going to give you a larger penalty, American, United, than the smaller, more attempting to be competitive airlines like JetBlue or Tower, which are smaller commercial carriers here in the United States. So it's going to vary a little bit from each airline carrier, but the general policy is the farther in advance that you cancel, the better off you're going to be in terms of avoiding a penalty. Sometimes you can avoid them altogether if you give them more than, say, 10 days notice, or in some cases 30 days notice.
Is it difficult to actually get a refund or return in your experience?
I would say that depending upon who you're dealing with, if you're dealing with a major carrier like a United or an American airline, there's competing interests because they have so many customers, they don't have to necessarily cater to you. A smaller carrier like JetBlue, they're going to do more. I've had situations with them where I had business trips that I had to cancel at the last second, but because they want your future business revenue, they're going to accommodate you. The smaller the airline, probably the better the accommodations. But as a general rule, all of them will give you some type of cooperation when it comes to cancellation. But I found that the larger carriers, the Americans, the Uniteds, are probably a little more difficult to deal with than the smaller carriers, because the smaller carriers are competing against the big guys for your dollars. So it's a question of commercial, common sense.
Tell me what kind of protections U.S. consumers have in regard to these returns and refunds.
And, and to draw a distinction, airlines are the largest and the most frequently used form of travel. Now, with rail lines and bus lines, people don't really travel on Greyhound like they did back in the 50s, right? In the 50s, Greyhound bus service was the way to travel around America. With the smaller land-based carriers, like, say, a bus or train. For instance, when I'm in New York City, I generally will go up to Grand Central Station, and if I want to go somewhere like in New Jersey, or maybe if I want to go to Washington, D.C., I'll walk up to the ticket agent, buy the ticket right there on the spot, and say, do you have a seat on the 5:30 train? Once you purchase that ticket, that's generally it, because you're buying it the day of. So for rail and bus services, you're going to have a lot less flexibility. You go to the Greyhound station, buy a ticket, and then try to return it the next day. You're going to have a difficult time getting all of your money back, and certainly you're going to pay some type of penalty. But protections for U.S. travelers, or even for international travelers who purchase tickets here or coming here on vacation, we have, for instance, the Better Business Association, and that's sort of an organization that's set up to rank and give the public information about the different companies that are out there. And because the internet is now part and parcel of social media and our everyday life, the companies have to tailor their conduct to meet the needs of the consumers more so than, say, 10 or 15 years ago, because bad news travels faster than good news as a general rule. So you don't want to be that company that cheats somebody out of their return or refund. Again, with airlines, if you do it less than 3 days before travel, you're going to definitely pay a penalty. But as a general rule, they're going to want to cooperate with you, because the competition in the United States for your travel dollar is so intense that they are not going to want to alienate any of their potential travelers.
Okay, going back to refunds and returns, what about in the case of a medical emergency? Could you get a full refund?
That's an interesting question, and I would say that generally speaking, you'll find that whatever company you deal with, you're going to have a contract in writing somewhere. You're going to see on their website, or you see on the back of your ticket, penalties that will apply. That written contract is there to protect the company from people who decide at the last minute they want all of their money back. So when you get your ticket, you're going to generally look on there and it's going to say a disclaimer, travel within so many days, or cancellation within so many days of travel will result in this penalty. Half, 1/3, 10%, it varies from company to company. But the question you're raising, in the case of a medical emergency, there have been persons who had medical emergencies. They're on vacation, let's say in the Cayman Islands, and they're set to travel back on Delta Airlines to New York City or to Miami Beach. And as a result of some procedure they've received, the doctor says you need 3 days of bed rest, you can't travel. Now you have a medical emergency. If you get something in writing from your doctor, that should be enough to give you the possibility of a full and total refund. And again, while the contract, whatever the written policy of that company is the law, and that would control in a court of law, as a general rule, something like a medical emergency is something that is so daunting and so overwhelming that the company will not want to risk the possibility of bad media or bad press for making a person who is unfit or unsafe to travel have to get on an airplane. And you could, if you were to take it that far, argue that you could go to court and sue for breach of contract or for rescission of the contract to the extent that the performance was impossible. Impossibility is one of the things we learned in law school can cancel out the requirements of a contract. If it was impossible for you to travel on the day you were required to because your life would have been in danger, then that's something a court would look at and determine whether it would be equitable to return you all or part of your refund or the amount that you put out. So there are a number of protections that are available to U.S. consumers and to international consumers, whether it be Russia or somewhere in Africa or somewhere in the South Pacific. Anybody that does business with an American incorporated company will get the same benefits and protections as an American citizen would. And I would say the travel industry in the United States probably has as good or better reputation than anywhere else in the world in terms of that. So I would say that there are a great deal of protections available for travelers.
Does the internet or social media provide any added protections to U.S. or international travelers?
I would say so. I mean, certainly there's a new website called Yelp. You can rate your company. You can go online and you can give an evaluation to a company that you're doing business with, whether it's a dry cleaners, whether it's the bakery, whether it's a law firm, whether it's an airline, a car rental company, because of the access of the average everyday man and woman to social media, which can be overwhelming. Somebody in Afghanistan can Google, flights to the United States for vacation, and you will have the ability as a consumer to write your evaluation. Just like if you go to the store, you go to the Adidas store and you buy a pair of running shoes. You don't like how they fit. The first thing people do nowadays, because people are media savvy, people are internet savvy, the first thing they do is, what kind of running shoe do I want? I want the Adidas so-and-so. So you look up that model and you look for reviews. You go on Amazon.com, people purchase a lot of stuff. The first thing people do before they push the buy button is read the reviews. And now you, the consumer, have been given or gifted power by way of your keyboard because of the internet. The internet gives you a voice that, in the 90s, 1991, 1992, we really didn't have access to the internet. Now, the travel consumer has a voice so that he is now immediately connected to everyone else in the world. So the internet really does give you an additional amount of protection that's even better than the written contract on the back of your ticket, because no smart businessman wants to alienate not only the customer that he has, but potential customers from a worldwide basis that may be put off by you writing one bad evaluation. So that's going to give you a lot more bargaining power and a lot more negotiating power when it comes to trying to negotiate a return or a refund based upon something that happened that prevented you from traveling, whether it be an unexpected illness or something at work happened or something along those lines. But I would say here in the United States, we certainly have a number of systems set up in place that will protect people here and people from abroad who want to come here.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you for your time.